Basil, it's Robbie. You know, I've had a lot of you ask me why do I plant in pots and not in the ground. And it's true, we have 2 acres, so we can plant anything anywhere in the ground. But you really don't need a plant in the ground. As long as the pot has got holes on the bottom and it's sitting on the ground, it'd be good if it's a couple inches in the ground. The plant is going to grow almost the same. It's going to send its feeder roots out. Let me show you this. This is strawberry spinach. Let's see if I can get this in the cameras for you to see this. Now, I'm going to pull this out. Can you see the roots on this? From this plastic container? This is root bound. Now, it's going to be fine. I've been planting them. There were 6 of them in here, and I've been planting them all over the yard, and you just kind of tickle the roots down and you plant it. But the point is, what I'm trying to make a point here is that this plant was in a nursery, sitting on a table, and the roots could only go around in a circle. That's all it could do. If it would have attempted to go out the bottom, and there are holes, it's called air pruning. It would have died. The roots, the feeder roots cannot dry out. It cannot touch air. They have to be in soil, or some people grow in water. The main thing is it cannot touch dry air. That's why they get root bound at the nursery or at your house. But had this been sitting in a pot and the roots started to leave through the bottom, the plant would have continued to grow. The plant would have gotten huge. It would have sent the feeder roots inside the dirt and would have continued to grow that way because it would not have air pruned. It would have kept growing. And I see that all over. I like to compost in place, and when I do that, I also put pots, and now I'm building towers. The plants will send their roots out the bottom of the pots. Here's another one, also from the nursery. Let's see what this looks like. Again, sitting on the table or on a cement ground. See, there is no way that this plant could have allowed its roots to go out the bottom. But if I took this very same plant, now it is a little bit root bound, just a little bit. I mean, it's actually looking good, but the roots are already starting to wrap around the pot. Had I planted this plant in this pot and put the seeds in there and put this pot on the ground, it never would have wrapped around. It would have gone down the pot, looked around, and found the holes on the bottom. And it would have said, oh, I can leave. I can keep growing. Look how big those holes are. You probably can't see it against my black shirt. Look at that. This plant would have kept going. So technically, if I would plant some seeds in here and put it on the ground or an inch on the ground, an inch underneath, the plants would grow. Now I'm going to end up putting this plant in here, and this plant will be just like it's in the ground because that pot is an inch in the ground and the wood chips are all around it and it's got big holes. This plant's going to keep growing and keep growing really big. It doesn't matter if it's in the ground or in a pot. As long as the feeder roots can go down into the dirt, into the soil, it will continue to grow. It will just get as big as any other plant because the feeder roots are what feeds the plants, the small roots that are growing at the ends. Now, would I be able to move this plant? Not easily, because at some point, if I lifted it up, I would tear those feeder roots. Now, if you put the plant in the pot in water and let it recoup, you could move it somewhere else. But this plant's going to stay here, and that's the way it's going to grow. The same thing with the onions. You know, that's in a pot. I've got so many of my plants are in pots. But the thing is, they're huge. I'll show you some more in a second. The idea is their feeder roots can go where they want, and their feeder roots are what is going to feed the plant, and the plant's going to grow. Remember, you cannot take a plant, sit it on cement, sit it on glass, sit it on a tray, sit it on a table, and expect it to get any bigger, because it will get root bound. It's just going to wrap and wrap around, because the moment the roots try to come out the hole, they dry up, and that's called air pruning. So you can grow massive amounts of plants on the ground, on the soil, not a cement driveway, and the plants will just send their roots down. The earthworms will come underneath because it always stays damp, because a pot on the ground is like mulch, and the earthworms and the microbes will all come underneath and continue to feed that plant as well. The earthworms will go up and down inside the pot as well. So as far as pots, you grow the way you want. I really like pots, and the reason I like pots is when I go to water this plant, especially when it's really hot in the summer, I will know that this tomato plant's going to get the water. If it's on the ground and I'm hitting it with water, I don't know where the water's going. It may look like it's going to my plant, but it might go this way, that way. It might find the crack and go straight down. When I water this, once I put this in the pot, I know that the roots are going to get water because it's going to be filled up in this pot. The water will go to the roots, and then from there on, once it leaves, it doesn't matter. The plant's going to get water. So I like pots. So that's why you could build a tower and put a whole bunch of small pots around, even with flowers. You could take these small pots, plant some seeds, get a few flowers, whatever you want, put these around your towers or your raised beds, and the roots will grow out of the bottom and continue to grow. It's amazing. It's wonderful. Let me grab the camera and show you some of these plants that are growing in pots. But don't be fooled. Their roots are way under the ground. I mean, we had a carrot wood tree that was in a small 2-gallon pot that ended up like 20 feet tall because the roots left the bottom and it continued to grow. So the main thing is as long as it doesn't air prune and as long as it has contact with the soil underneath, it will continue to grow. Let's look over here. This collard plant, look how big this collard plant is. That collard plant is in that small pot, which is in another pot. But look at the size of the trunk. See, that the roots of this collard plant has left, and it's now long in the ground. And that's why I really love layering. I love layering plants even here. These tomato plants, I wish I could get you inside. Let me see if I can try. Can you see in there? See if I can reach inside there. Do you see this in there? Let's see if I can. Now see that black pot straight down? This huge tomato plant that's growing way up in the air is coming out of that pot. It was a small pot that was sitting in this container, and the container, of course, is filled with soil. The tomato plant grew. I didn't plant the tomato plant. It came up from seed, and it stayed in that pot, but it's a massive plant. It grew in that small pot, and it's still in the small pot, but the feeder roots are not. The feeder roots are in the big container, the big tub. And has it left this tub and gone out because there's holes on the bottom? Might have done that too. But that's what I'm trying to point out. And let's walk over here. This basil plant I bought was in a small pot. And because it was in a small pot, I went ahead and I transplanted it into a bigger pot. Now this basil plant is going to send its roots out when it continues to grow, and it will be growing inside the soil here. That's the way that basil plant will grow now. I did have to remove it out of the pot it was in from the nursery because it had already wrapped around the inside of the pot. In other words, it was like going to be root bound. Now that it's started all new in that pot, it will leave that pot as the roots grow, and it will go into that top container on my tower. And it will turn into a big, massive plant. It won't know it's in a small container. It knows it gets watered there because I'll use the watering can to water it, but it's going to keep on growing. So you can layer in pots. I mean, over there is my other container, and look at the size of those kale. And they're in pots. But again, what's happened over there is their roots have left the pots because those pots do have big holes on the bottom. and their roots are now inside my composting bin, where I compost in place. I do not wait, I do not turn, I just, in the beginning, throw pots on top or plant right in it. So two of the kale I can see from where I'm standing are planted inside my compost tub there, and then the rest of them, or actually there's 3, I guess. A little one came up on the side. But the rest of them are in pots, because they will leave the pots. The same thing here. They're in pots. So you can layer that way, and to me it's convenient and easy to take care of when I do it that way. I mean, this is just amazing. I'm going to try to set the camera down. See, I find this so easy and amazing to do. Is this little tiny collard plant was planted, well, I don't even know if it came up from seed, but it's in this pot now. And this pot is in this pot. And I'm composting in this pot because I'm going to plant something else in the bigger pot on the bottom. But the roots have left. It didn't get root bound because it grew in there. So you can do layers with your plants that way and put in all these pots and get fancy pots. If you have a small garden and you want to grow a few things to eat, you can make it look so pretty with all kinds of small fancy pots. And you can have all kinds of plants growing. More doesn't mean better. Bigger isn't better. You don't want to make a big garden and become too overwhelmed to the point where you don't want to grow anything. You want to have a small garden that you can easily maintain and enjoy. Because if you don't enjoy it and it becomes a big labor to you and a big chore and a big job, you're not going to want to do it. Easy and good. This to me is a good thing. This is good. Let them grow in their pots. Make sure that they have holes on the bottom so they can get into the soil, and it's just so much fun. I'm going to turn you around one more time. Same thing here. All this is in my compost in place container, and they're all growing in pots. Look at that. I use a lot of pots. I enjoy my pots. And I can move them if I wanted to move them and plant them somewhere else. And that's what I like about the pots. I can move them and I can enjoy them anywhere I want. I do have to remember that if you lift a pot up, when the plants have sent feeder roots, it will look like it died. So you really will have to drop it in a tub of water or make sure it's well watered until it comes back, because the roots that left the pot are very important to the plant. So I hope I've given you some ideas on what you can do with your plants and your pots. I'm going to get this tomato plant planted in this pot, and it's going to leave this pot. It's going to stay in there, but the roots are going to leave, but this tomato plant is going to grow up this tower. So have a great day, and don't forget to eat what you grow. Make your life easy, and make it fun. Bye-bye.